Hello and welcome to episode 260 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of a shout out to me, your resident GPP bro kind of week. Yes, that's right. I had a really good sweat on Sunday in the FanDuel 222 buy-in tournament, the one with a little bit over 2,000 entries. With about 5 minutes left in the late games, I had a 5-point lead. You know, tough to figure out the exact math, obviously, but I think at least a 60% chance to win it, maybe even more, was basically fading Zeke, Cowboys D, Herbert, a little bit of Eckler, but I had Herbert covered with Big Mike Williams. So Zeke ends up getting a garbage time touchdown. Cowboys D gets a pick six on the draft, Mike Glennon. Herbert throws to Keenan a few times. And it's GG. I got third place for 15K. You know, certainly not complaining. Obviously, 15K is great, but it was 100K to first, 30K to second, 15K to third. You know, of course, that's just GPP bro life, you know? All the money is up top, especially in some of these FanDuel tournaments that are so insanely condensed in first place. It just is what it is. But yeah, I'm actually going to need you guys to address me as King GPP bro going forward. I can't wait to talk about my portfolio each week and have no idea what I'm sweating and blindly fire in 150 lineups and pray and say, oh yeah, I had exposure to that guy. Of course I did. You know, I can say, oh, I was only a 5v5 away from winning $1 million. You know, GPP bro life is great. In seriousness though, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the team and the thought process behind the team, because the construction was similar to the one that I won the juke with on DraftKings last year in week 17. The crazy part is I actually only made one FanDuel team in week 5. This was the only team. I want to start by making the overall point that touchdowns are worth so much more on FanDuel versus DraftKings. I mean, think about the scoring system. It's half PPR, not full PPR. And there's no 100 or 300 yard bonuses. That just makes the overall scoring on FanDuel so much lower. It weights the scoring so much more towards touchdowns. So obviously, you know, a lot of places I start on FanDuel is which team on the slate is likeliest to score the most touchdowns. So in week 5, maybe you could have said Dallas, you know, maybe you could have said Minnesota, but the Bucs at home to Miami, you know, obviously a threat to score the most touchdowns on the slate. And note that they had no Rob Gronkowski here, he of the absurd red zone role. The Bucs have shown zero willingness to use Cam Brate or OJ Howard in that Rob Gronkowski role. Also, if you look at pass rate over expectation stuff that Leone has been tweeting out on Tuesdays, I mean, it's absurd. Tampa Bay is so far and away leading the league in pass rate over expectation. It's wild. So in other words, they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. They're not going to go to the tight end because Gronk's out. They're going to throw for most of their touchdowns. And they have a really good chance to be concentrated in all their touchdowns to the wide receivers. And then you say, oh, that's a pretty good spot. Let's see what the field thinks. So then you go to our FanDuel ownership projections on the site. Shout out to us. We had Tom Brady for 7%, Mike Evans for 10%, Godwin for 8%, Antonio Brown for 7%. I think Godwin's role has been a bit shakier of late, and he was 7,600. Mike Evans was 7K. Antonio Brown just 6,500. So easy decision there from a value perspective. Double, Brady, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown. Also, if you listened to Establish the Million on Saturday, you knew that Dink was all the way in on Mike Evans. Shout out to him. All right, so we have the high upside double that fits the format, and all three are relatively low owned in projections, and they also have positive values in our projections, like the perfect double stack, right? Brady, Evans, Antonio Brown. As for the bring back, you know, I always want to correlate tight end where I can. It's just such a shitty position. I want to knock it out as part of a if this goes right build, which of course is the only way to make GPP teams. We assume that what we play is going to hit 90th percentile or above. So if things go right and the Brady, Evans, AB go off, there would be a ton of Dolphins dropbacks on the other side and a ton of garbage time. And with Will Fuller and Devontae Parker out, Mike Gesicki had a case to be the number one option, especially in the red zone. Like, I didn't want to use a valuable wide receiver spot on Jalen Waddle here, especially on FanDuel where it's so touchdown heavy. I mean, Jalen Waddle, this dude is 5'10", 180. He's so low in the PSM. Obviously not a great FanDuel play. And I didn't want to burn a wide receiver spot. So yeah, just all lined up to play. Gesicki, freak athlete, oversized wide receiver who can play a tight end, not got the tight end spot. And he was just so cheap on FanDuel. Also, you get to shout out Penn State with Mike Gesicki, and his headshot is like the best ever. He looks like such a hardo. It just all lined up so perfectly. So 4 of the spots down immediately. Double stack, bring back with Gesicki. Alexander Mattison was such an outrageous value in our projections for this home spot against Detroit. And so given how late the news came out on Alexander Mattison, about an hour and a half before the games, I thought maybe we'd get a 10 or 15% ownership discount. In other words, if the Dalvin news was Friday, more people would be on Alexander Mattison. In this tournament, Mattison came in 64% owned, which is obviously like very high and absurd, but I'm still okay with eating running back chalk, like this kind of running back chalk. I would never, obviously, play anyone at that high ownership at any other position. Then the other running back spot to me was like the best value, the best RB value on the slate on FanDuel, Damian Williams at just 5,800. I know if you haven't played FanDuel, you may not be that familiar with the pricing, but 5,800 is very, very, very cheap for the role that Damian Williams had. I thought he would have. Turned out that Khalil Herbert played way more than I thought he would, but Damian Williams 5,800 was ridiculous. So 6 of the 9 spots down right away. I had plenty of money left. I'm still thinking touchdowns. As Leone talked a lot about last week, Mike Williams had a bad game in week 4, and his price was soaring above Keenan Allen's. And that meant that like nobody was going to be on big Mike Williams, even though he still had this ridiculous X role, this ridiculous Michael Thomas role with ridiculous Justin Herbert in Joe Lombardi's offense. So given like I was a bit chalky with Madison and Damian and Gesicki, Big Mike made a ton of sense as kind of a pay up to be contrarian play. And then I wanted the mini stack from that game for correlation. I couldn't face Odell after he ravaged me in week 4. Nick Chubb has these monster ceiling games that are tough to account for, but we know that King Sharp, Brandon Staley, would dare Cleveland to run. So I like that mini. We had Big Mike Williams projected for 3% ownership on FanDuel. He was 2.7% in this. We had Nick Chubb projected for 7% ownership. He was 7.8% owned in this tournament. And that just left me with $5K for what I thought was the best defensive play, New England. And so that's it, easy game. I know like talking through it and talking back, it seems like so simple and so easy. I want to be clear that obviously I'm making tournaments, teams like this all the time, every week. 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 teams a week like this. And most of the time it completely flames out, obviously. And that's really why it's so tilting to take a bit of a bad beat to get third instead of first. It's just so hard to get a sweat up at the top of a tournament, let alone be a favorite with 5 minutes left. But yeah, emphasizing the scoring system that you're on, emphasizing correlation, understanding ownership projections, understanding salary-based value, understanding how teams score touchdowns. You saw it on correlation. People say, oh, is it that important to do bringbacks? Is it that important to stack? Really? Think about it. A Nick Chubb 52-yard touchdown run gives the Browns a 2-touchdown lead. Herbert comes out blasting to Big Mike. They're working together. Just 2 guys breaking the PSM going at it. And you need big plays, big touchdown plays to win these tournaments. And that just gives the ball back to their team. Doesn't take a lot of time off the clock. And the whole idea of mini stacks and correlation, it just, when it works correctly, it outsizes the return. All right. I want to get to cash quickly, but I actually want to remind everyone, it's crazy, but the NBA season starts in exactly 1 week, 7 days away from opening night of the NBA. Our NBA team, led by Dink, led by Mike Gallagher, the King, are covering the NBA just as intensely as we cover the NFL, except there's a slate every single day. If you plan to or want to play DFS hoops, I think it's almost impossible to play without getting help on news / projections / injuries / context. It's just an absolute onslaught every day. So check out the NBA subscribe page. We have 2 separate products up. We have 1 product for DFS. We have 1 product for player props. All right. That's enough GPP bro talk for one day. That's enough NBA talk for one day. I'll quickly run through cash, and it was a glorious day for team play the best plays. Like on DraftKings, if you didn't play Derrick Henry, Alexander Mattison, and Devontae Adams, I think you need to reevaluate your process. Not because of the results, and the results were completely absurd, but because of the way the slate's set up and their prices. There were no quarterbacks to pay up for with Lamar and Josh Allen and Mahomes and Russ, et cetera, not on the slate. There was no Christian McCaffrey, no Metcalf, no Diggs, no Tyreek, no Kelsey. Basically, every tight end on DraftKings was overpriced, except for the punts. So the trio of Henry, Madison, Devontae, they just stuck out like a sore thumb. If you didn't play all three of those, again, I think you need to reevaluate things. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, but Adam, everyone knows that. Everyone knows. It was so easy. How could you? There's no edge. Oh, really? If I showed you some of my head-to-heads, you'd be thinking differently. And in the single entry double up, the $25 single entry double up, again, make our opponents prove it. In the $25 single entry double up, Alexander Madison was 61% owned. Derrick Henry, 62%. Devontae Adams, 52%. Think about that. 40% of the field decided not to play one or both of Madison and Henry. Half decided not to play Devontae Adams. And that's in double up, not even head-to-head. So again, these are my favorite weeks when we have these tighter player pools for cash. Prove it weeks. Make them prove it. I wanted to make one last point about the Madison stuff. So my thesis was that Madison would be too low owned. And we talked about this Sunday morning on the last minute with Silva. But my thesis was that Madison would be too low owned in lower stakes stuff and likely appropriately owned in higher stakes stuff, maybe even over owned. And it played out that way somewhat. But obviously, it's clear most of the field now is grinding on Sunday mornings. Madison was only 35% in the $20 Millie Maker, 52% in the slant, the $9 large field, 63% in the Wildcat, the $333 large field, 73% in the 4K Millie Maker. So yeah, I mean, obviously the $20 Millie Maker to have Madison at 35%, that is incredibly soft. Like, we know that. Like, the softest tournament is the $20 Millie Maker, but the field is so huge, it's just really hard to make money in. But yeah, I just want to make that point on Madison. All right. I've talked long enough. Let's get to everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, thanks to everyone for the questions. If I didn't get to yours, I might get to it next week. Just getting so many questions. I do appreciate them all. Some of you are truly hilarious. Question 1 from Luke. Do you ever, in your most contemplative moments, think of how fine a needle you're trying to thread by helping your opponents get better and still trying to beat them? Yeah, so I'm not trying to hashtag how rich anyone here, but to be honest, most of my dollar amount action each week is in high stakes head-to-heads, 500s, 1Ks, 2Ks, 5Ks. Obviously, I only play a few of those each week. There just isn't a huge player pool at those levels. So most of my head-to-heads, yes, by raw number, not by dollar amount, but by raw number, come at lower stakes. And those lower stakes games, if I'm being honest, are pretty irrelevant to my ROI. My point is that, like, I'm happy to help people if I can. Like, those people aren't scooping my high stakes action. I know ETR people aren't scooping me at high stakes because I see their teams, and trust me, it's wild. Like, I think ETR people and people who follow me on Twitter, they like to play me for 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 or whatever. And that's cool. It's for fun. It's great. I'm happy to help them. And to be clear, I think almost all pros and high stakes serious players are subbing to ETR, but they aren't scooping me. Also, I'd add something that I've talked about before. Like, I didn't realize it when I was younger at all, and that was a mistake. But the upside in business is just exponentially higher than in playing. Like, when I found poker in 2001, 2002, I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to print and be a zillionaire. This is the best. And I just played. And of course, like, there is no real ceiling on that. If I dedicated my time to the business angle of it, like, I don't know, start an online site, start Pocket Fives like Cal, start Card Runners or Poker Tracker like Taylor and Wiggins, start Run and One, start Card Player Magazine, develop the cards everyone uses, the felt. I mean, who knows? So as I got older and I got into DFS in 2014, it just hit me like, no matter how good you think you are or how good you really are, the ceiling, no matter how good you are or how good you think you are at gambling or at playing the game, the ceiling in the business side is just higher, exponentially higher. I mean, come on. Action Network sells for $240 million. Lineups.com sells for 39 million, RG for 40 million, Barstool for zillions. I could go on and on. To suggest that there's ever a chance that playing could get someone to those levels, I mean, forget it. Now, that said, I absolutely love playing and competing. I love it more than anything. And honestly, like, I really do love helping people. Like, I think that we have honestly helped a lot of people get much, much, much better at playing DFS and thinking about probabilities and thinking about gambling and thinking about the NFL. I genuinely believe that, and it's awesome. But I still love playing more than any of the business stuff. So I'll always be a player first. It's just what I love to do. I just love to grind. But, I'll always be a player first, but there's just no doubt that, like, suggesting that I would, like, not want to help people so they won't beat me at like $20 head-to-heads. I mean, that's just an insane way to think. Question 2 from Justin. He says, I've played pickup basketball in many different places, and Philly is the only city that plays 2s and 3s. Why do hoopers all across America pervert the game by playing 1s and 2s? It's funny you bring this up, Justin. So I get out here to Denver, and I go to the gym with Peter, you got, CSU, and a bunch of other guys. And the first time I'm there, they say they're playing 1s and 2s, not 2s and 3s. And of course, like, Peter is the most ridiculous 3-point shooter. I don't know if you guys remember, we did a bet a couple years ago where he had to make, I think it was like 67 or 68 college threes out of 100 in one try. And he did it. I mean, you don't need to be a motherfucking mathematician to understand that 3-pointers while playing 1s and 2s are ridiculously valuable, like outsized valuable. It's impossible. When you're playing 1s and 2s, it's almost impossible for a 1-pointer to be correct in that format. I mean, it's insane. And it just messes up the entire game playing 1s and 2s. And these guys in Denver, they know Peter's a ridiculous 3-point shooter. They're just letting him blast off. Like, it's correct for him to shoot 35 footers, even if he's only making like 30% of them, because anything's better than taking a 1. So yeah, I got them to change it. I've never played 1s and 2s. 1s and 2s is not basketball. It's who's a better 3-point shooter. That's just silly. 1s and 2s has to stop. Question 3 is actually, 2 people had a similar question. 3A from Toby. Toby says, how do you compartmentalize Sunday's tilt? I didn't think there was a chance you lost after Big Mike Williams' last TD. And from Aaron Eisenberg, he says, who reacted less, you losing a GPP or Kobe when Matt Barnes faked throwing the ball at his face? Yeah, so Toby and Aaron are referring to the Tilt Space live stream. That's a YouTube show on our channel every Sunday with Overzet and Leone and Hoka, where they sweat the end of the games. So I went on the show to sweat the 100K with them on Sunday. And like I said, I was definitely a favorite, like a really decent favorite, very late. And then Zeke scores. And that put me not in first anymore when Zeke scored, in that garbage time. So I guess people were expecting me to like cry or break something or freak out. I don't think I'm any type of probability expert from a math sense, but I've been doing this so long that like I can feel it. Like, once you lose ace king to ace jack all in pre, or queens to jacks enough times all in pre, like, you get it. And you don't have to get the actual math. You get that a 70% favorite does not mean that you've won. An 80% favorite does not mean that you won. It means that 3 out of 10 times you lose, or 2 out of 10 times you lose. And I know that sounds super simple, but the public has a really hard time getting their heads around what it means to be a favorite and probability. Like, we saw it in the 2016 election. I think Nate Silver had Hillary as like a 70% favorite, and then Trump wins, and people act like 30% is some tiny number. 30% is a huge number. 3 out of 10 times. So yeah, losing 60-40s, losing 70-30s in big spots. I mean, I've lost so many of them in my life, and I've won so many that I feel nothing, like stone numb. And yeah, most of the time it's not 85K swings like it was on Sunday. So I was honestly surprised I didn't feel more emotions. I'm just dead inside. And yeah, like, this lack of emotion or feeling isn't great for real life. Not having emotions, positive or negative, it's honestly a shitty way to live, I think. People die, people are born, people have good things happen to them, bad things, weddings. I mean, all these things happen to me and people I'm close to, and I feel nothing. Like, it's fucked up. I'm obviously trying to like figure it out and get better, but I have so many other problems that I need to be in therapy, 5 days a week in order to address everything. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I try to think about things in a probabilistic sense. And when you're 70% favorite or 60% favorite, I mean, it's not that much. Question 4 from Nick. He says, do you ever enter your cash lineup into any smaller field, higher upside contest? My cash team dropped 224 points. Feels like a missed opportunity. I don't. I think you can put your cash team in maybe in some ultra small field stuff, but I still don't think it's right. I still don't think it's optimal. I think in the long term, you're losing doing that, but that assumes that your cash lineup is really in line with the market, really in line with the field. Like if all your guys are 20% owned or higher, or 30% owned or higher in a GPP, like you're just dead. Now, if your cash team is a bit more unique, maybe you have some correlation in them, I could see it being okay maybe. So it depends, but I do think putting your cash team in boosters is fine. Triple up, quintuple up, even the 10x stuff. Ideally, you'd have more correlation in that lineup, but I think the fields in those boosters are typically soft enough where you could maybe get away with having a cash lineup and still being plus EV. And that assumes you're a good cash player, of course. Question 5, also from Nick, I think. He says, is it okay to break up with someone by texting them? We've been going out 4 months. I really don't want to man up. I just want to go on to the next one. Is a phone call better than a text? I can't do this face to face. I have no balls. Yeah, I mean, let's play this out. What happens if you do it in person? If you think she's going to get like angry and violent, I could see a phone call maybe being okay. But I really doubt most women would respond like that in this spot unless they're like really psycho. I think in most runouts, the most likely outcome here is tears. And that's kind of humbling, right? Like this person is so upset that you don't want to have the sex with them anymore, that they're actually crying. I mean, to me, that's an ego boost for you. So yeah, I don't think there's really anything to be afraid of. I honestly find in life that raw honesty is the best play. And I think people really appreciate like the vulnerability that also comes with honesty. It's connecting in a way, even if the truth is hard to hear for people. So good luck, man. Let us know how it goes. Question 6 from Top Shot Bear. He says, why haven't you made your Twitter profile picture an NFT you own? Are you anti-future? Yeah, given the handle Top Shot Bear here, I assume he's trolling a bit. I mean, look, I love punks, the Larva Labs crypto punks. I love the thesis, the story. They're the first NFT, the first PFP project, etc. I think the rest of these PFP projects are essentially punk ripoffs and incredibly stupid. That's just my opinion. To change my profile picture to a goon or a bored ape or a frog or whatever the fuck else, I mean, I would need 7 figures. It's just humiliating. I mean, to me, in my opinion, it's humiliating. And a lot of my friends do that. It is what it is. In my opinion, it's humiliating. That said, I really do believe in the underlying technology on NFTs though. And I think there's a lot of cool things you could do with them in terms of utility. Zed, the horse racing game, is incredible. I love it. I do think Top Shot has the right idea, even though the prices got completely ridiculous. Justin Herzig, our best ball king, is doing an awesome project where you can play fantasy with the football NFTs you own. It's just so obvious to me that, blockchain technology is going to get built out over the next decade to where it's just ubiquitous. But yeah, I think most of the shit that you see out there now, 99% of it is eventually going to zero, I think. But, what do I know? I'm really not that well versed in this stuff at all. The last thing I'd say is the only thing that tilts me is people suggesting, none of this stuff tilts me. The only thing that tilts me is people suggesting that they are actually into this shit. Like that they aren't just out there gambling. Oh, Adam, it's the community. It's such a great community. Oh, the Bored Ape community. It's the community. Let me tell you, as soon as we hit a bear market and this shit crashes, no one is going to give a flying fuck about the community. It's all bullshit. I wish people would just say, yeah, I bought this NFT of an ape because I'm trying to make money, period. At least that would be honest. I bought punks because I was trying to make money, period. I don't give a fuck about the community. It's insane. Question 7 from Poopy Doopy. He says, do you think DraftKings has gotten too aggressive at pricing guys up the past couple years? The salary cap seems a lot tighter than it used to be. For example, Dallas Goedert was $5,200 2 weeks ago. How does that make any sense given his role and production? Yeah, it's a good question. I generally just think, hey, each week is a different challenge. Some guys are mispriced too cheap. Some guys are mispriced too expensive. It's just up to us to figure out the best strategy, period. No excuses. Play like a champion. Now, if you're asking about me personally, I do prefer when it's a little bit looser. Not stone pick'em looser. But yeah, I don't think it's great for casual players to have to be grinding the difference between Ross Dwelly and Will Dissly or something like that. We can price Noah Fant or TJ Hawkinson more reasonably, create more options at more positions for good plays. All that said, it's an incredibly hard job to price this stuff when it comes out on Sunday night. And we don't want everyone priced perfectly. If every player was priced perfect, it would be impossible for anyone to make a mistake. So that's not good either. It's tough. I wish some weeks it was a little bit looser, but honestly, for the most part, I think DK does a pretty good job. They're clearly trying. Sometimes FanDuel does stuff where guys get so egregiously mispriced for multiple slates in the NBA. It's just silly. All right. Question 8, last question we're going to do today from Matt. He says, don't you think three-ways are underutilized? It's hard to find a partner that can fulfill your needs, but when another partner is brought in, it can be beneficial to all. Yeah, so I've thought about this, and I get where you're coming from, Matt. I do. But I'm thinking about the inverse. Like, it's bad enough for me to ruin one person's sexual experience. I'm not sure I can face ruining it for two people, you know? I'm sure that, or at least I hope, that you guys have seen Office Space. I mean, Office Space is legit one of the best movies ever. And although it's a comedy, really should be an inspiration to everyone, in my opinion. But at one point, Ron Livingston asked his neighbor, he says, what would you do if you had $1 million? And the neighbor just immediately looks at him and says, 2 girls at the same time. And yeah, you know, I agree in theory, but in reality, in practice, I don't know, man. I'm just not an orgy guy. You know, to quote Seinfeld, I'd have to get all new clothes. I'd have to grow a mustache, get all kinds of robes and lotions and new friends. It's just too much. And all this ignores that, like, of course no one wants to have an orgy with me. Reminds me of this time I was playing poker at Parks in Philly, and Parks hired actual models to be waitresses. It was absurd. And so one of them walks by, and this old slob at the table says something like, oh man, if only I wasn't married. And I just couldn't take it. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure if you weren't married, she'd just be dying to have sex with you, man. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, people just got to get better on the self-awareness scale. And I think that applies to the orgy scene as well. All right. That is going to do it for this edition, the GPP Bro edition of the Solo Pod. I'll be back later tonight with Silva to go team by team. If you haven't tried out ETR yet, reminder, we do have weekly and monthly options available now on the subscribe page. Also, be sure to check out our NBA products. All the details you can find there in the NBA dropdown. For producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody. All right.